Have you ever walked through your day, perfectly fine on the surface, only to feel a sudden, heavy wave of emptiness crash over you? You look around, trying to pinpoint the source, but everything in your current life seems okay. You have a stable routine, people who care about you, and a safe place to live. Yet this profound sense of loneliness settles deep into your chest, and you cannot explain why. That is because the ache isn't coming from your present. It is an echo from a time when your world was very small, and the people who were supposed to fill it with warmth were simply out of reach. It is the lingering residue of a childhood where you were physically provided for, but emotionally left entirely to yourself. Growing up in a home where you felt unloved or invisible doesn't always look like loud arguments, slamming doors, or obvious chaos. Often, it looks like a completely quiet house. It is the suffocating stillness of a living room where everyone occupies the same space, but no one truly sees each other. It is the memory of sitting at the kitchen table with a report card you worked so hard to achieve, hoping for just a single moment of eye contact, only for the paper to be pushed aside without a glance or a word. It is the routine of keeping your voice down, your needs small, and your presence unnoticed, just to keep the peace. You learned early on that your feelings, your excitement, and your hurts were an inconvenience to the adults around you. And so, you tucked them away, believing that if you weren't demanding, if you could just be perfect and silent, you might finally be worthy of love. Think about the moments you spent in your childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the rest of the family downstairs. You felt like a ghost in your own home, a spectator watching a life you weren't fully invited to participate in. There were no long conversations about how your day went, no one asking what made you sad, and no reassuring arms to hold you when you felt afraid of the dark. You had to master the art of comforting yourself before you even understood what comfort meant. When you scraped your knee or had your feelings hurt at school, you didn't run to your parents, crying. You went to the bathroom, wiped away your own tears, and put on a brave face before walking back out. You became an expert at reading the shifting energy of the adults in the house, walking on eggshells, gauging their moods by the heavy sound of their footsteps or the sharp tone of their voice, learning exactly when to disappear into the background. This quiet abandonment leaves a specific kind of scar. It implants a quiet, persistent whisper in the back of your mind that says, if the people who brought me into this world don't care to know who I am, then I must not be worth knowing. You carry this silent assumption into your adult life like a heavy piece of luggage you can never put down. It shows up when you are sitting in a room full of friends who genuinely love you, yet you still feel completely detached, as if there is a thick pane of glass separating you from the rest of humanity. It shows up when you apologize for taking up space, for asking a simple question, or for having a basic human need. You have become so used to the quiet emptiness of that childhood home that whenever someone offers you genuine warmth or undivided attention, it feels foreign, terrifying and almost painful. You find yourself waiting for them to realize you aren't worth the effort and pull away, just like the adults from your past did. The silence of those early years taught you that your presence was a burden, and unlearning that survival script is one of the heaviest, most exhausting journeys you will ever take. But recognizing that the quietness belonged to their inability to love you, and not to your lack of worth, is where the path back to yourself begins. When you learn early in life that the adults around you cannot or will not catch you when you fall, you don't stop falling. You just stop asking for help. You realize, with a heartbreaking clarity, that no child should ever have to possess, that you are entirely on your own. To survive in that emotional desert, you build a shield. You become fiercely, undeniably independent before you even know what the word independence truly means. You learn to fix your own problems, navigate your worst anxieties alone in the dark, and handle life's crises before anyone else even notices there is a fire. On the outside, everyone admires your strength. They look at your life and call you resilient, reliable, successful, and grounded. They tell you how amazing it is that you always have everything under control, that you are the rock everyone else can lean on. But inside, that shield is incredibly heavy, and it is wearing you down to the bone. This hyper-independence is not a natural personality trait. It is a survival mechanism born from neglect. It is the subconscious, deeply rooted belief that if you stop taking care of everything yourself, everything around you will collapse. It is the fear that if you show a single moment of vulnerability or weakness, you will be abandoned all over again. You don't ask for help because, in your heart, you believe that asking invites rejection, or worse, that no one would show up even if you did call out. Carl Jung once wrote, "The psychological condition of the parents determines the psychological condition of the child." When parents are emotionally absent, preoccupied, or consumed by their own unhealed pain, the child is forced to grow up far too fast, stepping into the role of their own protector. You had to become the parent to your own fragile self. Think about how this manifests in your life today. When you are overwhelmed, sick, or drowning in responsibilities, your instinct isn't to reach out to a partner or a friend. Instead, you isolate. You close your door, lock your feelings inside, and figure out a way to power through it alone. If someone offers to help you carry a heavy load, your immediate reaction is to say, "No, thank you, I've got it," because receiving care feels incredibly unsafe and unfamiliar. You feel an intense anxiety when you aren't in control of a situation, because control is the only thing that ever made you feel safe in a chaotic or indifferent childhood home. You have become an expert at anticipating everyone else's needs, managing their emotions, and smoothing over conflicts, all while your own heart is screaming for someone to just look at you and say, "Let me handle this for you. You can rest now." Carrying this shield means you are constantly on high alert, your nervous system always prepared for the moment the world lets you down. It is an exhausting way to live. You are tired, not just from the physical things you do, but from the emotional vigilance of never allowing yourself to drop your guard. You have spent decades being the strong one, the capable one, the one who never breaks. But you were meant to be a child who was cherished, protected, and allowed to make mistakes without the fear of losing love. If you are utterly exhausted today, it is because you have been carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours alone. It is because that heavy armor, which saved your life when you were small and defenseless, is now the very thing keeping you isolated from the love, support, and deep connection you so desperately need and deserve. The way we are loved, held, and responded to in our earliest years becomes the unseen blueprint for how we expect the entire world to treat us. It is the foundational map we use to navigate human connection. When that blueprint is missing affection, validation, warmth, or safety, we enter adulthood looking at every relationship through a fractured lens. We do not realize that the map we are using is drawn from a place of scarcity. And so we keep walking into the same painful dead ends, wondering why love always feels so dangerous and fragile. You find yourself trying to build a stable life on a foundation that was cracked before you even had a chance to choose who you wanted to be. Think about how this silent blueprint dictates your days right now. When you are in a relationship or a close friendship, you might find yourself constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. You live with a quiet, underlying panic that at any moment, the people you love will realize you are not enough and walk away. When a friend or partner doesn't text you back for a few hours, your mind doesn't just assume they are busy, driving, or having a chaotic day. Instead, it immediately defaults to the original childhood map. It assumes they are tired of you, that they have finally seen the unlovable flaw within you, and that they are quietly withdrawing their affection. Your heart begins to race, your stomach knots, and you are instantly transported back to that lonely childhood bedroom where the silence meant you were abandoned. Because of this blueprint, you might find yourself overextending in every connection you have. You become the person who listens to everyone else's problems for hours, fixes their crises, and comforts their pain, while never sharing your own burdens or asking for anything in return. You have been conditioned to believe that you are only allowed to stay in people's lives if you are useful to them. You trade your own boundaries for their validation, believing that if you stop giving, they will stop loving you. You accept minimal effort, coldness, or emotional unavailability from romantic partners because minimal effort feels comfortable. It matches the original home you grew up in. It is what you know. When someone comes along and offers you consistent, gentle, and unconditional love, it feels terrifyingly foreign. You might even find yourself pushing them away or sabotaging the relationship because your blueprint tells you that real warmth is a trick, a cruel illusion that will eventually be snatched away from you. It takes a profound, life-altering amount of courage to look at these destructive patterns and realize that your current relationship struggles are not proof that you are fundamentally broken or unlovable. They are simply proof that you are still operating from an old, survival-focused script written by an unloved child. You are trying to protect yourself from being abandoned again by abandoning your own needs first. But you are no longer that helpless child at the mercy of emotionally unavailable adults. You have the power to look at that old blueprint, acknowledge the pain it has caused you, and choose to draw a new one that says you deserve to be seen, heard, and cherished just for who you are, without having to perform or earn it. To heal from the deep, lingering wounds of an unloved childhood, we have to stop looking backward with just resentment or intellectual understanding, and start looking inward with a tender, protective compassion. We have to realize that time doesn't actually erase our earliest heartbreaks. It just buries them beneath layers of adult responsibilities, bills, and coping mechanisms. Deep within your adult self, living in the quiet spaces of your heart, is the exact version of you that originally learned to hide. It is the 8-year-old who sat on the bedroom floor feeling completely alone in the world, wondering what they did wrong. It is the teenager who felt like an invisible burden just for existing, trying desperately to figure out how to matter to people who could not see them. Think about the moments in your current life when your emotional reactions feel entirely too big for the situation at hand. When you feel a sudden, burning surge of intense anger because someone interrupted you in a meeting, or when you feel an overwhelming, paralyzing urge to isolate yourself after making a minor mistake. That isn't just your logical adult self reacting to the present moment. That is the younger version of you, triggered by the familiar, searing sting of rejection and invisibility. That is the little child inside you, screaming out because they think they are about to be abandoned or punished all over again. They are crying out for the protection, the defense, and the reassurance that they never received when they were small. Meeting this child within means refusing to push those sudden bursts of pain away anymore. It means when that familiar wave of shame or loneliness washes over you, instead of scolding yourself for being too sensitive or telling yourself to just get over it, you pause. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, and turn your attention inward toward that hurting part of you. You look at that frightened, lonely child, and you say the words they have been waiting decades to hear. I see you. I know how much this hurts, and I am so sorry you had to go through it alone. But I am here now. I am not going to leave you, and I am going to protect you. This is not a silly imagination exercise. It is a profound reclamation of your own heart. For most of your life, you have probably been mad at that vulnerable part of yourself. You blamed your sensitivity, your longing for affection, or your deep sadness for why you weren't loved. You tried to starve that inner child, hoping that if you became cold, detached, and perfectly successful, the pain would finally stop. But healing begins the exact moment you realize that child didn't do anything wrong. They were just a little person who deserved warmth, and didn't get it. When you stop ignoring that inner pain and instead sit with it, hold it, and validate it, you are finally giving that child a safe place to land. You are becoming the sanctuary you always needed. The voice of an emotionally absent or hypercritical parent doesn't magically disappear when you pack your bags and move out of their house. It doesn't fade away just because you grow older or put physical distance between yourself and your childhood home. Instead, that cold, dismissing voice often hitches a ride inside your own mind, slowly transforming over the years into your very own inner critic. It becomes that harsh, unforgiving internal judge that speaks up louder than anyone else whenever you try something new, take a risk, or make a human mistake. It is the voice that instantly tells you that your best efforts aren't good enough, that you should have known better, or that you are foolish for ever believing you could succeed or be happy. Think about how this cruel voice sneaks into your quiet moments today. When you do something wonderful, perhaps you complete a meaningful project, or you share a beautiful moment with someone, the critic immediately steps in to minimize it, whispering that it was just luck, or that it won't last. When you make a simple mistake, like dropping a glass or forgetting an appointment, the critic doesn't just say, "That was an accident." It attacks your core identity, saying, "You are so stupid. You always ruin everything. Why can't you get anything right?" We often mistake this destructive critic for our own authentic voice, believing it is just us being realistic, disciplined, or keeping ourselves in check so we don't fail. But if you listen closely to its tone, you will notice it speaks with a devastating coldness and contempt that you would never, ever use on a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger. Carl Jung beautifully captured this painful internal struggle when he noted, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For someone who grew up unloved, self-acceptance feels terrifying because your earliest environment taught you that you were only safe when you were fixing, changing, or hiding who you were. The inner critic acts as a twisted shield. It beats you up internally before anyone else can do it externally, falsely believing that this self-punishment will keep you safe from the pain of outside rejection. Dismantling that inner critic requires you to stop believing everything it says. It means waking up to the realization that these harsh words running through your head are not absolute truths about your worth. They are just the internalized projections of people who did not know how to love you properly. They are old echoes of a parent's stress, indifference, or unhealed trauma that got dumped onto your young shoulders. The next time that voice rises up to tell you that you are a burden or a failure, you must learn to gently but firmly interrupt it. You can look at that harsh thought and say, "That is not my voice. That is just the old ghost of my past, and I do not have to agree with it anymore." You are allowed to replace that coldness with a soft, protective kindness, learning to speak to yourself with the warmth you have always deserved. Reparenting sounds like a grand, abstract concept found only in psychology books, but it is actually built on the tiniest, simplest choices you make in the quiet spaces of your daily life. It is the active, deliberate decision to step into the role of the loving, attentive, and protective caregiver you always needed, but never had. It means looking at your adult self with all your fears, your exhaustion, and your longings, and choosing to give yourself the very things that were withheld from you when you were small. It is the process of building a new home inside your own heart, one where you are finally allowed to be human. Think about how this looks in your everyday reality. For so long, you have probably operated on an automatic setting of self-neglect. When you are completely exhausted after a long, grueling day, and your body is practically begging you to stop, your survival instinct is often to force yourself to keep going. You push through the fatigue to complete a long to-do list, believing that your rest is something you must earn through endless productivity. Reparenting is the gentle, steady voice that steps in right in that moment of exhaustion, puts a hand on your shoulder, and says, "It is okay to stop now. You don't have to prove your worth by burning yourself out. The world can wait. Your well-being matters more." It is allowing yourself to lie down without a heavy blanket of guilt suffocating you. Reparenting is also how you handle your heaviest emotional storms. When a deep wave of sadness or anxiety hits you for no apparent reason, your old childhood programming tells you to lock it down, hide it, or scold yourself to just shake it off and be strong. But a loving parent doesn't tell a crying child to just get over it. A loving parent sits on the edge of the bed, opens their arms, and creates a safe space for the tears to fall. Reparenting means sitting quietly with your own heavy feelings and letting them exist without judgment or shame. It is looking at your anxiety and saying, "I know you feel afraid right now, and that is okay. I am right here with you. We are going to get through this together, and I am not going to leave you alone in the dark." This practice requires you to actively rewrite the cruel, unwritten rules you were raised with. If you grew up believing that you were only loved when you were perfect, quiet, or useful, reparenting is the daily practice of celebrating your mistakes as proof that you are growing. It is buying yourself a simple meal because you deserve to be nourished, or tucking yourself into bed early because your body needs comfort. It is validating your own hurts instead of waiting for the people who wounded you to finally apologize. You are stepping into your own life as the ultimate protector of your peace. Every time you choose self-compassion over self-punishment, you are sending a powerful signal to your entire being that the era of neglect is officially over. You are learning to hold yourself with the deep, unwavering love you always deserved. When your childhood teaches you that having needs, expressing an opinion, or simply speaking your truth causes conflict, anger, or abandonment, setting boundaries as an adult feels like a life or death situation. It feels terrifying. Your body retains the memory of being pushed aside or scolded for speaking up, So when you even think about saying no to an unreasonable demand from a colleague, or telling a friend that their careless words deeply hurt your feelings, your nervous system goes into a state of total panic. Your heart begins to race, your throat tightens up, your stomach knots, and an overwhelming urge to just apologize and back down grips you. You feel like that small child again, believing that if you do not accommodate everyone else, you will be thrown out into the cold. Because of this deep fear, you have likely spent a large portion of your life being a people pleaser. You became a chameleon, changing your shape to fit what everyone else wanted from you, thinking that keeping them happy was the only way to keep yourself safe. You swallowed your own anger, stayed silent when you were taken advantage of, and said yes to things that left you drained, bitter, and hollowed out. You chose to abandon your own heart repeatedly just to avoid the agonizing fear of someone being upset with you. You bought into the lie that your value was tied to how comfortable you could make the people around you, even if it meant living in a constant state of internal discomfort. But learning to set boundaries is the ultimate act of self-parenting. It is the moment you step out of the shadows of your childhood and refuse to let yourself be invisible anymore. Every single time you find the courage to speak up for yourself, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands are trembling, you are sending a powerful, life-altering message to your inner child. I am here now, and I am going to protect you. No one gets to mistreat us anymore. You are finally drawing a sacred line around your well-being and declaring that your peace of mind, your time, and your emotional energy are worth defending. Reclaiming your voice means understanding that you no longer have to set yourself on fire just to keep the people around you warm. You are not responsible for managing the emotions of full-grown adults. If someone gets angry, defensive, or pulls away because you finally said, "I cannot do that for you," or "Please do not speak to me that way," their discomfort is not a sign that you did something wrong. It is simply proof that they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Their reaction belongs entirely to them, and it is not your job to fix it. It is to let people be disappointed. It is if they don't understand your journey. Your voice matters. Your limits are real, and your peace is worth protecting, even if it makes the whole world uncomfortable. You are no longer that helpless child who had to stay quiet to survive. You are an adult with the power to say, "No more." For those who grew up in a home where love was conditional, feeling that you had to constantly earn your right to exist through achievements, perfect behavior, or endless chores, rest can feel like a heavy blanket of guilt. You might find it incredibly difficult to just sit still, even for a few minutes. When you finally sit down on the couch to watch a movie, or try to spend a quiet afternoon sitting on the porch looking at the afternoon sky, a restless, vibrating anxiety creeps into your chest. It whispers that you are being lazy, that you are wasting time, or that there is something urgent you should be doing instead. You have tied your core human worth entirely to your productivity, believing that if you aren't doing something useful, you have no value at all. This painful pattern is born from a childhood where you were only noticed or praised when you accomplished something. Perhaps you were the child who felt they had to get perfect grades just to receive a nod of approval, or the one who cleaned the whole kitchen just to prevent an argument. You learned that being still was dangerous because it made you vulnerable to criticism or neglect. Activity became your hiding place, and accomplishments became your armor. As an adult, you carry this frantic energy into everything you do. You run from one task to the next, filling every hour of your calendar, terrified of the silence that comes when you stop. Because in that silence, the old childhood fears start to surface, asking, if I am not producing, if I am not helping, if I am not fixing something, who am I? Will they still want me around? Reparenting requires you to gently but firmly untangle your human worth from your productivity. You are not a machine meant to run until your gears grind to a halt. You are a living, breathing human being whose value is intrinsic. You do not have to earn the right to breathe, to slow down, or to simply exist. Allowing yourself to rest, to play, and to engage in things that bring you pure, uncomplicated joy with absolutely zero productivity value is not a luxury. It is an essential, non-negotiable part of your healing journey. It is a way of telling that exhausted child inside you that they are allowed to take up space in this world, even when they are doing absolutely nothing at all. Embracing the freedom to rest means learning to honor the deep exhaustion in your bones without demanding a justification for it. The next time you feel the urge to lie down, and that familiar voice of guilt starts listing all the things you should be doing, you must learn to talk back to it with love. You can say to yourself, I am allowed to rest because my body is tired, and that is reason enough. I don't have to earn my peace. It means choosing a quiet afternoon over another stressful obligation, letting the dishes stay in the sink for one more hour, and learning to let your nervous system finally come down from a lifetime of high alert. True rest is an act of defiance against the neglect of your past. It is the ultimate statement of self-love, proving that you finally believe you are worthy of care, comfort, and a gentle, quiet life. The parts of ourselves that were rejected, criticized, or ignored by our caregivers when we were young do not simply vanish into thin air. Because a child's mind realizes that expressing certain parts of who they are leads to coldness or abandonment, those parts are quickly hidden away in the dark. If you were told that you were too sensitive, you might have locked away your empathy, building a cold, unfeeling wall around your heart. If you were shamed or scolded for getting angry, you might have buried your assertiveness so deep that you forgot how to defend yourself entirely. You pushed these vital pieces of your identity into the shadows, believing that keeping them hidden was the only way to stay safe and loved. As adults, we carry this shadow like a hidden room in our house that we are too terrified to open. We live in constant fear that someone will break the lock and see the messy, unpolished emotions we have spent a lifetime concealing. Carl Jung explored this painful division of the soul deeply, stating, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Healing the deep wounds of an unloved childhood means going into that darkness with a lantern of compassion and gathering up those discarded, lonely pieces of yourself. It means realizing that the parts of you that were labeled as abandonment or too much by emotionally absent parents were never actually broken. They were just misunderstood. Think about how this reveals itself in your life today. When you feel a sudden surge of intense envy toward someone else's freedom, or a sudden burning wave of anger that makes you feel deeply ashamed, your immediate instinct is to suppress it and pretend it isn't there. But your anger is not inherently bad. It is the part of you that knows you are being mistreated, trying desperately to signal that a boundary has been crossed. Your sensitivity is not a pathetic weakness. It is your profound capacity for deep connection, empathy, and beauty. When you lock these things away, you are accidentally continuing the very same neglect you experienced as a child. You are abandoning yourself in the exact same way they abandoned you. Integrating your shadow means opening that hidden door, reaching into the dark, and inviting those rejected parts of yourself back into the light. It is looking at your messy emotions, your deep longings, your hidden grief, and even your sharp edges, and saying, "You belong to me too. I am not going to hide you away anymore." When you stop fighting against who you are, you stop repeating the cycle of rejection within your own mind. You give your inner child permission to stop performing and just be whole. You begin to realize that you do not have to be a perfect, flawless figure of light to be worthy of love. You just have to be real. Embracing your entire story, the light, the dark, and every shadowed space in between, is the moment you truly become whole. Reparenting yourself and mending the fractures of an unloved childhood does not mean that you will magically forget your past, or that the quiet grief of what you missed out on will completely vanish from your life. True healing is not a total erasure of your scars. It is a profound transformation of how you live alongside them. There will still be random moments, perhaps during major life milestones, quiet holidays, or just a random Tuesday afternoon, where you feel a sharp, familiar twinge of sadness for the childhood you deeply deserved, but never got. You might look at a parent lovingly comforting their child in a grocery store and feel a brief, heavy ache for the little version of you who had to walk through the world without that gentle hand to hold. But the beautiful, life-altering difference now is that you are no longer stranded or drowning in that grief. You are no longer a helpless captive to the neglect of your past. Through your own immense courage, you have built a steady, unshakable safe harbor right within your own chest. You have successfully become the very person you were always waiting for. You are now the loving adult who can cradle your own fears, the enthusiastic cheerleader who celebrates your own victories, and the grounded presence that offers the deep, unconditional love you always craved from the outside world. You no longer look into the mirror with the critical, dismissing eyes of the people who could not see your worth. Instead, you look at yourself with a soft, protective tenderness that says, "We made it through the dark, and I am so incredibly proud of you." Think about what the landscape of your life looks like when your heart begins to heal. The frantic, suffocating anxiety of having to be perfect all the time slowly gives way to a quiet, spacious peace. You find yourself breathing a little easier, laughing a little louder, and resting without a heavy blanket of guilt pulling you down. When you make a mistake, instead of falling into a spiral of self-hatred, you simply hold yourself with kindness and try again. When people pull away or fail to meet your needs, your world no longer collapses into chaos, because your sense of safety is no longer tied to their approval. You have anchored yourself in your own validation. You have learned the sacred art of being your own sanctuary. You are no longer waiting for the people who wounded you to finally change, apologize, or suddenly wake up and give you the love they withheld. You have stopped demanding water from a dry well. You have realized that their inability to love you was a reflection of their own brokenness, their own unhealed trauma, and their own empty hearts. It never had anything to do with your worth. By stepping into the role of your own parent, you have broken a generational chain of silence and neglect. You have taken the raw, painful pieces of an unloved childhood and spun them into a life defined by deep empathy, fierce boundaries, and soft resilience. You are no longer just surviving the ghost of a quiet house. You are fully, beautifully alive. You are no longer waiting for someone else to come along and save you, because you have already done the brave, sacred work of saving yourself. You are finally, completely home. The journey of healing from an unloved childhood is not a path with a clean, definitive finish line. It is a slow, rhythmic unfolding, a continuous returning to yourself. When you choose to reparent your own heart, you are embarking on a profound restructuring of your entire inner world. You are actively choosing to dismantle a house built on silence, neglect, and conditional worth, and replacing it with a sanctuary of your own making. This final chapter is not about finding a magical cure that erases the past. It is about acknowledging the vastness of the landscape you have traveled and understanding how to inhabit your healed identity every single day. For the longest time, you likely viewed your life through the lens of survival. Every choice you made, every boundary you failed to set, and every achievement you chased was driven by a quiet desperation to prove that you had a right to be here. You wore your hyper-independence like a badge of honor, unaware that it was actually a heavy suit of armor, keeping the world at bay. Healing shifts you from that frantic state of survival into a deep, grounded state of being. It allows you to put the armor down. It gives you permission to step out of the constant high alert status that kept your nervous system tightly wound for decades. You begin to realize that safety is no longer something you have to actively manufacture through perfection or control. Safety is a state of mind you carry within yourself. As you step forward into this new way of living, it is essential to prepare for the quiet days, the moments when the old echoes try to whisper their way back into your thoughts. Healing is not a linear climb. It is a spiral. You will have weeks where you feel entirely grounded, free, and deeply connected to your worth. And then, a minor interaction, a cold tone from a manager, an unreturned text from a close friend, or a distant look on a loved one's face will threaten to pull you right back into the vulnerability of that lonely childhood bedroom. When those days come, it is not a sign that your healing has failed. It is simply a sign that you are human, and that your history is a part of you. The difference now is that you possess the tools, the awareness, and the profound self-compassion to parent yourself through those waves. Instead of panicking and believing you are broken all over again, you can pause, place a gentle hand over your chest, and remind that frightened inner child that they are safe. You can look at the old anxiety and say, "I see you, but we are not there anymore. The past cannot hurt us now." This constant, gentle reassurance is the daily maintenance of a healed heart. It is how you ensure that the old blueprint of connection never dictates your present reality again. Through this process, your relationships will undergo a beautiful, necessary transformation. When you stop operating from a place of emotional starvation, you stop accepting crumbs from the people around you. You stop trying to fix, change, or save people who are emotionally unavailable because you no longer recognize that coldness as a familiar home. You begin to gravitate toward connections that offer clarity, warmth, and mutual respect. You find yourself surrounded by people who do not require you to shrink your presence or perform for their affection. You learn to receive love just as fluidly as you give it, allowing yourself to be held, supported, and cared for without the agonizing fear that you are being a burden. Carl Jung once observed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For someone who grew up unloved, this privilege is hard-won. You had to hide through layers of internalized shame, harsh critics, and systemic self-neglect just to claim the right to love yourself. But the person who emerges from that struggle is someone of immense depth, empathy, and resilience. Because you know exactly what it feels like to be invisible, you possess a rare, beautiful capacity to see the unseen parts of others. Because you had to build your own light in the dark, your warmth is deliberate, steady, and unshakable. You become a living testament to the fact that our beginnings do not have to define our endings. The architecture of quiet is the life you build when you finally stop fighting your past and start honoring your present. It is the steady foundation of a home that does not shake when the storm blows. It is the ability to sit in a room by yourself and feel entirely content, knowing that you are in good company. It is the freedom to look back at the little child you once were, the one who felt so small, so hidden, and so completely unloved, and realize that you have become the exact adult they always needed to protect them. You have taken the empty spaces of your childhood and filled them with a profound, self-generated devotion. As you close this chapter of your journey, take a long, deep breath and let the truth of your survival settle into your bones. You are no longer that helpless child waiting for a parent to notice you. You are an adult who has chosen to wake up, turn inward, and reparent your own pain with an absolute, unconditional love. You have rewritten the script of your life. You have broken the generational patterns that tried to hold you captive, and you have carved out a space in this world that is entirely your own. The road behind you was heavy, long, and filled with shadows, but the landscape ahead is wide open, peaceful, and bright. You are safe. You are worthy. You are loved because you chose to love yourself. You are finally, beautifully home.